Now, a new approach to predict and track malnutrition in Africa, driven by the same advanced technology, now could help trigger a shift from crisis response to early action against hunger, according to scientists. A nutrition early warning system or news outlined in a white paper published yesterday by the International Center for Tropical Agriculture would use cutting-edge big data approaches to process large volumes of information and multiple sources to detect early signs of food shortages and raise the alarm about impending crisis. Now, the technology powers everything from internet search engines to consumer fraud protection, with 1 in 4 people in sub-Saharan Africa malnourished and famine and food shortages already affecting South Sudan and looming in northern Nigeria and Somalia. The approach aims to fast-track solutions to meet global commitments to end hunger and malnutrition by 2030. Initially, news will focus on boosting nutrition in sub-Saharan Africa by responding to triggers and allowing relief agencies, donors and governments to make more informed decisions. All right, with me in studio now to discuss this subject is Mercy Lungaho, the nutritionist and research scientist from the International Center for Tropical Agriculture. Mercy, good morning. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you, Akisa. Good morning.
Well, this sounds like exciting news. Just bring us up to speed. What really is news?
Thank you. That's a very good question. News is really a service intended to help decision makers take early action against threats that can increase malnutrition. If I was explaining it for my grandmother, I'd say it's
like
really,
using the layman's language.
Yeah, it's really about paying attention, going to local communities and paying attention to the extent of malnutrition, what causes malnutrition, and what are the potential solutions.
Do you think that is being done now?
I think it's being done, but we have to remember one thing. Africa is at a tipping point. It's only in Africa that poverty and malnutrition are increasing. It means there's something we're not paying attention to. And what research is coming in to ask is, what is it we're not paying attention to?
So what are you doing differently? Because previously it has been done. Countries have different ways on how they handle malnutrition or how they detect it. What is this different thing you're bringing on board that will help Africa detect cases of malnutrition and even handle it after it has been detected?
That's an excellent question. I think what sets news apart is that we're being proactive rather than reactive. We're using, as you said, big data, artificial intelligence, machine learning to ask years in advance, what are the potential threats and what are the options we have in place? So for once, at least, we're able to prevent rather than cure problems.
Which countries are you starting off with?
We have the 4 countries that have now problems. South Sudan, Somalia, Northeast Nigeria, Ethiopia. Those are the core countries because right now that is the issue at hand. But the goal is really at the end of the day to have this spread over Africa, because remember, Africa has 22 countries with the highest levels of malnutrition in the world.
How do you think governments have been handling cases of malnutrition in Africa?
Governments are a key stakeholder when it comes to malnutrition. And I think they can do their job even better with news because we're able to give them accurate information in a timely manner. If they have this, I think they have what it takes, the political commitment, the clarity, and the leadership to really address malnutrition in Africa.
So have they embraced it?
They are a key stakeholder, and through the African Development Bank, they have pledged to support this.
So, big data, being proactive and not reactive. Of course, you've spoken about the 4 core countries: South Sudan, Somalia,
Ethiopia, Northeast Nigeria.
Northeast Nigeria, and Ethiopia. For instance, if we take South Sudan and Somalia, for months now, millions and millions of people have been affected with both famine and malnutrition, especially for children. you will not be going in now as being proactive because we already have the problem. So how are you going to handle that?
I think you raise a very important point. The development and humanitarian actions are really aligning around the same agenda and trying to reduce malnutrition. What you need to remember is that the crisis right now is producing new levels of malnutrition. And we need this data now into news to start asking that question. When crisis occurs, what does it do to malnutrition and how do we act following that?
Mm-hmm. So how will this particular innovation that you've come up with help countries in future when it comes to coming up with policies on food security, especially the countries that are most affected or are prone to such cases?
News is really unique in two ways. One, it will inform, and the other, it will warn. I think even as we go into humanitarian action in these countries, we're really asking what are the best practices? What can we carry forward? And that would be important to know for people who are investing in this type of action. But the second is to warn. If something is not working, we need to know. I like the story you just said on Ebola. We thought we had handled this. It just erupted again. So malnutrition is something that shifts very quickly. We need a system that can be able to track it over time and be very vigilant in telling us what to pay attention to.
There's a big issue in Africa, Kenya as well. Talking about corruption, artificial food shortages, we've had instances where even the government is involved in hoarding food commodities, then bringing it back to the market at very high prices. Is this new system going to address anything like that?
Well, that's a loaded question. If I was from government, I think I would be able to answer that. But what I really want to say is in Africa, malnutrition is increasing. I'm emphasizing that it's increasing because we lack one critical thing, accurate information. Let's start by getting the accurate information first. Then let's deal with the roadblocks as they come up.
Accurate information, you say. Mercy, thank you for coming in. That is Mercy Lungaho. She is a nutritionist and research scientist from the International Center for Tropical Agriculture. Thank you for coming in.